The Kiyotaki Tunnel, nestled in the outskirts of Kyoto, isn't just a passage through a mountain. It's a 444-meter-long nightmare. In Japan, the cultural connection between the number 4, or shi, and death is not a casual superstition. It's a direct, bone-deep dread. And in the eerie gloom of this infamous tunnel, that dread feels less like a warning and more like an active, malicious force. The tunnel's story begins not with a ghost, but with back-breaking, unforgiving reality. It was built during the 1920s, a testament to early modern engineering, but one stained by human misery. Local lore says the construction was a brutal affair, executed under cruel conditions. The laborers, many of whom were poor, conscripted, or effectively indentured slaves, died in droves from exhaustion, collapses, and neglect. Their bodies were often not recovered or honored. They were simply covered, buried in the earth, sealed into the mountain rock, and chillingly, perhaps even entombed within the wet concrete of the tunnel itself. Their final, agonizing breaths are said to be forever bound to the passage they were forced to create. Their spirits, the restless Yurei of the forgotten workers, are the raw, chaotic energy that powers the tunnel's curse. For decades, the Kiyotaki Tunnel has been the epicenter of Kyoto's most chilling paranormal claims, a magnet for those seeking a thrill, and a source of profound terror for those who are just trying to get home. Motorists who dare to drive through its suffocating length at night tell of an inexplicable phenomenon, their car's engines suddenly sputtering, dying in the middle of the passage, plunging them into an absolute, suffocating darkness. The transition from the distant glow of the exit to the sudden, lightless void is instantaneous and terrifying. In that darkness, silence never truly reigns. Some drivers claim to hear the faint, desperate shrieks of the long-dead workers, their voices like wind trapped in a stone flute, thin and high-pitched, echoing off the damp walls. These aren't just sounds, they are feelings of deep oppression and panic, a sensation of being crowded by unseen bodies. More disturbing still are the reports of disembodied handprints that suddenly smear the windows, a patch of ghostly condensation pressing against the glass as if a frantic soul is trying to reach in from the other side, begging for release from the stone tomb. But the pervasive ultimate terror of the Kiyotaki Tunnel is embodied by the entity simply known as the White Woman. She is a Yurei, a vengeful ghost, described as a figure in a flowing white kimono, often seen standing at the very end of the tunnel, a pale, silent silhouette framed by the distant moonlight. Her face is usually obscured, either by shadow, by her long, stringy black hair, or by an unnatural head-down posture, but the sheer presence she exudes is enough to turn blood to ice. The legends concerning her origin are multiple, but all are tragic and soaked in violence. One version claims she is the spirit of a woman who was brutally murdered near the temple whose path the tunnel now bisects, her body hidden in the deep forest only to have her soul pulled to the concrete grave. Another insists she's a woman who threw herself off the tunnel's high-arched entrance, a desperate suicide on cursed ground, and whose spirit is compelled to reenact her fall. A third, more complex tale links her to the tunnel's cursed construction, suggesting she was the lover or wife of one of the unfortunate laborers, driven mad by her grief and subsequently murdered by the heartless foreman. The terrifying twist to encountering the White Woman is rooted in the tunnel's unsettling reputation for temporal and spatial distortion. They say the length of the tunnel is not constant, depending on the time of day or perhaps depending on the current level of restless, malicious energy nearby. It is said to change in length, sometimes shortening, sometimes terrifyingly lengthening. Those who have measured it on foot swear it is longer than the officially stated 444 meters when they traverse it in the dead of night. If you drive through at night and see her pale form, the absolute ironclad rule is you must never stop. Stopping is an acknowledgement, an invitation, and an immediate surrender to her curse. To halt your vehicle is to risk the engine refusing to ever start again, trapping you in the cold, echoing dark while the air grows impossibly cold around you. The truly fatal mistake, however, is to look into the mirror placed near the entrance. In a desperate, futile attempt to ward off the evil spirits and prevent the endless stream of deadly car accidents near the tunnel, local authorities installed a large, unassuming mirror at the mouth of the passage. It was meant to be a protective measure, a sign of spiritual awareness. Instead, it became a focal point for the White Woman's malice. If you glance into that mirror, even for a second, and she is nearby, it is said you will see her reflection. She will be there, in your mirror, not at the tunnel's end, but perhaps sitting in the back seat of your car, inches from your head, or floating just behind your shoulder. The reflection is often distorted, her kimono stained with something dark, her hair an absolute black shroud. Once you glimpse her in the glass, your fate is sealed. She will haunt you relentlessly. She doesn't just want to kill you, she wants to possess your drive, your sanity, your actions. She becomes a silent, terrifying passenger, appearing in fleeting reflections in the corners of your eye, until she ultimately drives you to a horrific, unexplainable accident within the tunnel walls or on the winding, perilous road leading to it. Your death becomes the completion of her deadly cycle, adding another restless soul to the Kiyotaki's tragic toll. The environment around the tunnel seems to conspire with the terror. The air inside is thick and heavy, a deep, pervasive cold that has nothing to do with the weather or the temperature outside. It's a cold breath that stings the lungs, an instinctual primal chill that instantly overrides logic and urges you to drive faster, to escape the crushing weight of the earth and the concrete. Every whisper of air is a potential voice, every creak of the old structure a shifting body, every drop of water falling from the ceiling is a terrifying echo of the dead. The White Woman is the keeper of this passage, and to drive through her tunnel is to gamble with your life, hoping you make it to the sunlit world on the other side before the 444 meters of cold stone and the entities trapped in them seal you in to an eternal black silence. This story was shared with Watchman Tales by a former local who would always take the long way around, refusing to drive through the Kiyotaki tunnel after seeing a pale reflection in his rearview mirror one rainy night, swearing that for a moment the road had impossibly stretched out before him, trapping him in an endless void of his own fear. Now, let's move to the next story, which was sent to us by a student obsessed with Japanese urban legends.
She is not a creature of the distant past. She is a phantom of fluorescent lights and city shadows. A monster born of a savage, ancient grudge who thrives in modern paranoia. She is Kuchisake-Onna, the slit-mouthed woman, and her legend didn't just crawl out of the folklore books. It exploded into a terrifying nationwide panic in the 1970s, causing genuine fear, school warnings, and even police intervention across Japan. This isn't just a ghost story. It is a profound societal dread made manifest. The myth's origin lies in the Edo period, a time of strict honor and brutal consequence. She was said to be the spectacularly beautiful but deeply unfaithful wife of a samurai. When her husband discovered her infidelity, his vanity and rage consumed him. He took his sword and inflicted upon her a wound more agonizing than death itself, slicing her mouth from ear to ear, screaming, "Who will think you are beautiful now?" Her life ended in that moment of grotesque disfigurement, and her spirit, a powerful, vengeful Onryo, was condemned to roam, forever trapped in a cycle of judging and destroying the beauty she lost. The terrifying modern encounters always follow the same agonizing script, beginning in the most benign of settings. A person, usually a child, a student, or a solitary pedestrian walking late in the afternoon or at twilight, is approached by a woman wearing a surgical mask. In Japan, where mask-wearing is common for health reasons, this detail is initially innocuous. A mask is a shield, a promise of caution. But the atmosphere around her is cold, dead, and utterly silent. She approaches quickly, and her voice, though muffled by the cloth, is unsettlingly polite, almost seductive, as she poses the question that begins the deadly game. Am I beautiful? Watashi wa kirei desu ka? This is the first trap. The impulse to be polite, to reassure a stranger is strong, but the wrong answer is immediate death. If you say no, she becomes instantly enraged, pulling out a hidden, long, sharp object, a pair of scissors, a razor, a massive scalpel, and slashes you in half or kills you in a swift, merciless attack. But the real horror deepens if you answer yes. Pleased, the Kuchisake-Onna will take a moment, slowly pulling the mask away from her face, or sometimes using a slick, claw-like hand to tear it off. This reveals her true condemned form, a mouth that has been savagely slit from ear to ear, a bloody, grotesque, permanent rictus of a smile that looks less like a mouth and more like a wound that never stopped bleeding. Then she asks her second question, her voice no longer polite, but a chilling, rasping echo that seems to vibrate from the stone-cold air itself. How about now? At this point, there is no escape and no mercy in your words. If you panic and say no to her terrifying visage, she will show you exactly what happens to those who reject her. She will take her weapon and, with gruesome speed, slice your mouth to match hers, leaving you horribly disfigured, alive but condemned to share her horrifying, permanent smile, a living monument to her curse. If, in a moment of utter terror and self-preservation, you still manage to say yes, she is rumored to follow you to your doorstep, sometimes appearing inside your home and massacre you and your family, or simply take you away to an unknown permanent torment. It is a terrifying, unescapable sequence designed by a vengeful spirit who wants not just death, but psychological torture. The societal impact of the Kuchisake-Onna legend was profound. Throughout the 70s and 80s, reports of sightings were frequent. Schools issued official warnings to students, urging them not to walk alone and to avoid any woman in a mask who asked the fatal question. Some parents refused to let their children walk home from school unattended. The panic was driven by the fear that this monster could appear anywhere, anytime, turning a normal walk into a nightmare. It was a phantom that preyed on the politeness and rigid social code of Japanese culture. Over time, as people desperately sought to break the curse, the legend developed complex, desperate, and often contradictory escape tactics. The most popular one, and the only one that supposedly works, is to confuse her. If she asks the first question, you must respond with a deliberately ambiguous answer, like "you look average" or "so-so." This is said to buy you precious moments of confusion. The spirit is so fixated on a binary beautiful, not beautiful answer that the vague compliment causes her to pause, trying to process the response. That pause is your lifeline. You must use that fleeting moment to turn and run as fast as you can. Another, stranger rumor suggested you could offer her hard candy or sweets. It said the spirit is powerless to refuse this offering, leaving her momentarily distracted as she awkwardly tries to eat through the wound that is her mouth, allowing you to flee. The Kuchisake-Onna is thus a masterpiece of psychological terror, a seemingly normal encounter that spirals instantly into a life-or-death confrontation, forcing you to choose your own disfigurement or doom with your own words. This unsolved mystery was submitted to Watchman Tales by one of our listeners, who claims to have once run from a woman in a mask after giving an average response. And to this day, he cannot look at a pair of scissors or even a simple surgical mask without a chilling, visceral terror of that inevitable, bloody smile. Now, let's move to the next story, which was sent to us by a historian specializing in dark Japanese folklore.
Every culture has its cursed artifacts, its forbidden texts, its whispers of knowledge so dark they must never be spoken. In Japan, one of the most terrifying warnings is attached not to a haunted location or a vengeful ghost, but to a seemingly harmless poem. A piece of writing so profoundly soaked in spiritual darkness that merely reciting it aloud is said to summon a gruesome, inescapable death. This is the enduring literary horror of Tomino's Hell, Tomino no Jigoku. The poem was written by Yomota Inuhiko and published in his 1919 collection, The Heart is Like a Rolling Stone.
Contained within those pages, Tomino's Hell is a macabre, vivid journey through the underworld, chronicling the spiritual condemnation of a young boy named Tomino. The verses are intentionally dense, utilizing archaic language and unsettling imagery to describe an unimaginable path through the 13 mountains of eternal pain. It speaks of a sister vomiting flames, of the unending cycle of blood and thorns, of Tomino being driven by a constant, paralyzing fear and a terrible, bloody destiny that he cannot escape. It is, by all accounts, poetry as pure nightmare fuel. But the legend insists that the text is more than just verse. The words themselves are a malevolent gateway. The story, passed down through generations and heavily circulated in the dark corners of the internet, is absolute. Do not, under any circumstances, read this poem aloud. If you speak the words, you give life to the curse. The forces described within the poem's stanzas, the demons, the unseen tormentors, and the brutal logic of Tomino's inferno will be released to claim you. Death, when it arrives, will not be immediate or clean. It will be a slow, torturous descent into a personal, agonizing version of the hell Tomino describes, tailored specifically for the unlucky soul who spoke the curse. Those who have approached the text with skepticism or arrogance have, according to legend, paid the ultimate price. Tales circulate of literary students and researchers who, shortly after reciting the verses in a moment of intellectual curiosity, were struck by sudden violent illnesses. Some died within days, their bodies covered in inexplicable bruises and internal injuries that left doctors baffled. Others are said to have simply vanished entirely, leaving behind only the open book, the air in the room turning instantly frigid, their fate forever tied to the hell they foolishly evoked. The common thread is always a harrowing, painful, often bloody end, a mirror of the perpetual torments Tomino faces. One particularly famous online rumor focuses on a college professor who, while teaching a course on dark Japanese literature, decided to read the poem to his class as a literary exercise, dismissing the curse with a skeptical, patronizing laugh. Halfway through the recitation, the professor's voice began to choke and crack. He grew pale, clutched his chest, and began to violently vomit, eventually collapsing in front of the horrified students. He survived the immediate incident and was hospitalized, but his health deteriorated at a frightening speed. He was found dead a week later, his body covered in strange, non-specific bloody lesions that defied medical explanation. His last words, whispered to a nurse, were allegedly of thorns and the sister's flames. The terror of Tomino's hell lies in its insidious nature. It uses a common, benign art form as its unsuspecting weapon. It sits on library shelves, is digitized on the web, and can be purchased in bookshops across Japan. The danger is hidden in plain sight, a beautiful, artistic trap waiting for the curious and the foolish to utter the words that open the abyss. It's a chilling thought that the mere sound of a specific set of words, translated from the silent page into the vulnerable air, could be the last mistake you ever make. allowing an ancient condemnation to cross the veil and find its new victim. The consensus among those who study dark folklore is unanimous. The only way to engage with the text safely is to read it silently, allowing the horrific imagery to stain your mind without inviting the jigoku, or hell, into your world. Keep the words sealed behind your lips, and the curse, they say, remains confined to the page. But even then, some superstitious readers claim that the poem's darkness is so dense, so heavy with the suffering of Tomino, that even reading it silently can invite disturbing nightmares and bad luck. The terror isn't just in the fear of death, but in the realization that something as simple as a piece of art could be the deadliest force in the world. This story was shared with Watchman Tales by a group of online researchers who refused to even type the full poem into their databases, believing that even close proximity to the text is a risk best left to the condemned, and that some doors should never, ever be unlocked. Which of these stories gave you chills tonight? Let us know in the comments. And remember, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Watchman Tales, or something may be watching you right now. Sleep well, if you can.
You've seen their stories, but the darkness